Here's Dr. Theresa Tam, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, in a 2010 National Film Board documentary.
The public has to know this is one of the worst case scenarios in terms of an infectious disease outbreak, in that their cooperation is sought. If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings. It's potential you could track people, put bracelets on their arms, have police and other setups to ensure quarantine is undertaken. It is better to be preemptive and precautionary and take the heat of people thinking you might be overreactionary, get ahead of the curve, and then think about whether you've overreacted later. But it's such a serious situation that I think decisive early action is the key.
Police checkpoints are set up on all the bridges, and everyone leaving the city is required to show proof of vaccination. Those who refuse to cooperate are taken away to temporary detention centers.
Did you catch all of that? Whew, that's Dr. Tam discussing how she would handle the 1885 smallpox epidemic in modern times. Pretty scary stuff. Of course, it begs the question, is this the plan for our current situation with coronavirus or another virus in the future? Tagging people like animals and detaining innocent civilians against their will? When you consider that Dr. Tam is born in Hong Kong, which is a city and special administration region of China, a communist dictatorship, it's hard not to question if she believes in an authoritarian medical state for Canadians, the same way they operate in China. I'm not even sure why someone who is born in Hong Kong, again, it is part of China, and that's a country famous for its international communist spies. So how has she ascended to the highest ranks of Canada's public health agency? Am I to believe we couldn't find a second, third, or even fifth generation Canadian to do this job? The risk of conflict of interest is always there. Do you think Tam would call for travel restrictions to her home country if needed? What about sanctions or an inquiry? I doubt she'd hesitate if Russia were to blame, but China? She might think of her family or extended family in that country first. That's why countries should be careful about who they put in charge. Some do, but not Canada. Tam also happens to work for the China-controlled World Health Organization and is really their mouthpiece. So it's nearly impossible for her to be impartial on China's handling of coronavirus and their apparent cover-up. When you add to the mixture that she's born in Hong Kong, you really have to wonder, where does her loyalty lie? Is her sole focus the health and well-being of Canadians above all else? It certainly doesn't feel like her interests are with protecting Canadians. I mean, she did disparage us by calling us racist and xenophobes back in January, when our citizens were telling the Canadian government to shut the border to prevent the spread of coronavirus. In January, Tam was actually on Twitter saying she was troubled by the growing number of reports of racist acts and comments on social media directed at people of Chinese and Asian descent, calling them unacceptable and very hurtful. Awfully sensitive. There's so many examples of Tam's disloyalty to Canadians and sheer incompetence, including the fact that Canada gathered supplies like N95 face masks to ship to China without recognizing that we might need those masks if the virus managed to spread to Canada, which Tam didn't seem to be too concerned about back in January. Do you think she would have given all that gear to the United States if they needed it? She also downplayed the risk to Canada. Quote, right now the cases are in China. Very few are exported. Yes, there's human-to-human transmission, but those are generally for close contacts. With regard to the severity of illness, there are some severe cases, but the deaths have occurred in older people with underlying medical conditions. With all of that pulled together, for the general public who have not been to China, the risk is low in Canada. She then opposed any travel bans because, well, her bosses at the WHO don't like them. And then she went back and forth in the media regarding face masks. Initially, she said they didn't work to prevent the spread. Quote, wearing masks when you're well is not an effective measure. Sometimes it can actually present some risks as you're putting your fingers up and down on your face, removing your mask and putting them next to your eyes. Then she reversed course when US authorities said you should wear a face mask to help cut down the spread if you can't maintain appropriate social distancing and to cut down on transmission by Canadians who are infected but are asymptomatic. So we still have no clue if face masks work or not based on Tam's advice. How can this be such a confusing issue for a so-called expert? And don't get me started about the bunk model she forecasted on behalf of the World Health Organization organization that turned out to be mind-blowingly wrong, and that were the catalyst to shut down our nation's economy and stop people from working and trapping us in our houses. Everything she's done so far has been wrong or suspiciously stupid. How did someone so incompetent get to be in such a powerful position in Canada? The weird part is there's not much information about her online. I couldn't find much, so I started researching other sources that might have some info. They came up blank too, including this article on the website Euro-Canadian. The author writes, "There is very little available on her biography, very little personal and even professional information on Tam. Somewhere there was a post that she was 55 years old, but I couldn't find her date of birth, her place of birth other than raised in Hong Kong, the dates of her various degrees. I even went to the UBC and UA websites looking for alumni profiles, and there are no listings of her thesis and dissertation. The author also couldn't find her medical school records to find her year of graduation or any other post-grad qualifications. Now, Wikipedia does state her birthplace as Hong Kong, but we actually have no clue when she became a Canadian citizen or even if she is one. The World Health Organization's international website lists her as an international expert on a number of WHO committees, including SARS, pandemic influenza, and polio eradication. Anyways, what do you think about Dr. Theresa Tam? Let me know in the comments section below. As you know, I love to hear from you. And also just a quick note, because I know I'm going to get it in the comments. Yes, I've seen the Tam Adams apple photo. I'll just leave it at that. Have a great day.